Hello and welcome back to CamBro Conversations. Today's conversation, we are talking all things sleep and rest. And to do so, I'm joined by an expert in the field, Dr. Nerina. Nerina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Colin, for inviting me. I feel immensely privileged to be interviewed by you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I always say this, sometimes I wish I hit record when I first start speaking to my guests in the kind of pre-roll to get us warmed up, because there's obviously lots of little bits of value in there as well. But I'm going to promise the guests that we're going to bring just as much, if not more, in the actual recorded section of this. And the first area that I'd love to go is understanding sometimes how my guests end up in the arena and the industry that they're in. And it'd be great to understand your own background with sleep, because ultimately it's lit your fire to spend your career improving it for others.
Yeah, I like the words you've used there, lit your fire. And I think it literally is that. It's a passion for me, you know. And why? I've spent 25 years helping people to sleep. I'm known as one of the UK's leading sleep experts. I've worked in all sorts of industries, 10 years in psychiatry. I've gone into schools. I've worked with women recovering from cancer, helping them to sleep. But I would have to say it came before that, and even before the PhD, in neurophysiology. When I was a baby, I couldn't sleep. And apparently my mother was taking me from one doctor to the next because I was so restless and I couldn't settle and I wouldn't sleep. And of course, it wasn't very helpful for her. So it was a long battle with insomnia. And without even realizing a lot of the time that I had insomnia, we didn't particularly talk about it. I'm showing my age now, probably, but no one really talked about insomnia. It wasn't a big global, billion-pound business like it is now. But it was getting very sick in my 30s and recovering. And then from that, magically, doors opening and being given opportunities to help other people to understand what sleep's all about and sleep better. And I became known as a sleep expert.
What were some of those doors that opened then as you healed yourself from your challenges with sleep in your 30s? What kind of opportunities became available to you?
Oh, nice question. Well, after I left the academic world, I had a couple of things. I did a couple of postdocs and a lectureship post. I realized I wasn't really cut out for academia. I wanted to work with real human beings. So I ended up in a health screening clinic in the city, a bit like a Bupa style clinic. And in fact, we were eventually bought by Bupa. And I was measuring the health of city professionals, so your Goldman Sachs employees and Merrill's and the law firms and stuff. And they would come along for their 2-hour executive medical, and usually they were very tight-lipped. They don't really want to talk to somebody who's going to ask them, how are you feeling? And, why is your cholesterol through the roof? And how much do you drink? But when I asked people, how are you sleeping? That seemed to be able to really get them to open up. It felt safe to answer that question. So we all sleep. We've all experienced moments where we don't sleep well. So I started to develop this knack for talking to people about sleep. And in the process, I was helping them to learn how to sleep better, as well as helping myself. And then it was one day I got very sick in my 30s, and I ended up being signed off work for 6 months. And we could talk about that illness. I'm very open about it now. I've got a book coming out next year where I'm very open about what happened. But I was signed off work for 6 months, and I came back to work on a return to work program, reduced basis. And the phone rang one day, and I was sitting in reception, picked up the phone, and it was a partner from a well-known management consultancy who said, we need someone from your clinic to come in and talk to our staff about health, in particular sleep. Do you know anyone? And I said, yeah, I know just the person. Meaning me, I'd never done a corporate presentation before. I'd lectured really badly at University of Westminster, but not done that kind of stuff. And I went in, and that's where the corporate work kind of took off, and I kind of winged it a bit. I knew what I was talking about, but I did it really badly. In those days, we had acetates.
Yeah.
There's plastic things, and I had about 100 of them for a 15-minute talk or something like that. And I think I dropped them all at one point, and I had to ad lib for most of it because they weren't in order. But then I discovered that I had a passion for talking to people about this and bringing the science and practical and philosophy and psychology and personal insight, bringing that all together.
You're really talking my language and the language of most of the listeners, because many of the listeners love the scientific approach to health and fitness. And obviously, I think sleep falls underneath that bracket as well. And
Yeah.
what they love more than that, though, in terms of somebody throwing lots of studies at them, is what are the practical implementations that I can take and make off the back of this information? Because it's all well and good, these really high level studies and data being thrown around. But what does that mean for my day to day life? What parts of this are able for me to action, rather than just, am I impressed by the fact that this study was a placebo study with this blind feature, and did it produce this percentage difference in this type of patient or this type of patient? That's all well and good, but I love having people who have an academic background but who have practiced in the field. And that's what the podcast is all about, getting people to come forward with high level validated information, but ultimately actionable for people to go off the back of it. So I'm excited for this conversation, and from that respect, one of the things that was kind of sticking out in my head was, you said that you suffered with your sleep, and I've heard people speak before that sometimes that can be linked to how their parents slept before them as well. Is that the case? Are we doomed to be bad sleepers if, for example, your mum or your dad are a bad sleeper?
Well, my dad was a really bad sleeper. And of course, I was going that way as well. But now I'm a really good sleeper. So can I just give a message of hope to your listeners, right, who are thinking, oh my God, this is just going to be a really depressing story. No, I've learned I've had more than 2 decades of sleeping really well. In fact, I've got a little bit of kit on me at the moment. I'm not selling, I'm not on commission, but I was gifted this by a client, an Aura ring or something like that. And it keeps saying, God, your sleep is optimal. Your sleep is optimal, optimal. Apart from last night, because I was working late with the US client, finished at 10:30, and there you go. I was in front of screens till 10:30. What did it tell me? My sleep was really fitful, really restless. But yeah, there's small amount of insomnia, can be relatively small amount, can be inherited, genetic, but a lot of it is to do with behaviors and your environment. So you can inherit behaviors. You grow up in a family, people behave a certain way, and they're night owls, and that they eat late, and then there's a relationship with alcohol and all this sort of thing, and then that has an impact on sleep. And or there are environmental, familial, trauma related factors. And so certainly that's part of my picture, is that I grew up there was quite a lot of trauma in my childhood. My father also grew up in he had a very traumatic life as well. And so, ultimately, and I'm renowned for saying this, we sleep when we feel safe. It's a survival instinct. And if we didn't have that instinct, we'd probably be extinct, extinct as a species, if we didn't have that instinct, rather. So that if there's chaos going on around us and we're sleeping our way through it, we might have died out as a species.
Yeah, we would have been eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, or mauled by the bear, or whatever it was that we were exposed to, or we wouldn't have woken when the enemy tribe were trying to storm our camp, whatever it was. It's funny how what happens in our ancestry shapes how we move forward. But I'm equally quite interested in what you said there about how our environment dictates sleep quality as well, and how safe we feel. I know, for example, when I sleep in hotels, I don't tend to sleep as well. And I looked into it a little bit, and I understand that there's elements of, I'm not as familiar with my surroundings. So there's elements of my brain or my subconscious aren't switching off to the same extent they do when I'm in my kind of safe haven of my own bedroom, which I've slept in for most of my life.
Absolutely. And so that's where the safety really comes into it, and that a lot of people might be able to relate to that. And there are all sorts of ways of classifying our relationship with sleep, how we sleep. And the work of people like Professor Jim Horn, for example, at Loughborough University, he did some pioneering research and came up with sleep chronotypes, and he talked about owls and larks. Now, I keep it really, really simple, and I talk about your sensitive sleeper and your martini sleeper. So martini sleepers can sleep anytime, any place, anywhere. They don't know why I have a job. They can sleep on a pinhead. Your sensitive sleeper is the one who will stay in this lovely hotel. They'll be taking their own pillow. They'll be traveling on the airplane with their duvet or whatever. And their nervous system is more sensitized. And in trauma science or safety research, we call this neuroception. We're constantly scanning our environment. We may not even realize that we're doing it. Sights, sounds, smells. So you walk into our hotel room and it's the smell of the laundry detergent. the smell of the room, the feel of the room, the light level in the room, the sounds. That's what's stopping you sleeping. You may not even be aware of that. But that's one of the things I do, is I help people to recognize their sensitivities and to work with it. And so that they don't always have to be sensitive, and certainly pre-pandemic, I was traveling a lot. I did Hong Kong and back in 3 days for a piece of work. I mean, I don't think I'll ever go back to doing that kind of craziness, and nor do we want to be doing that kind of stuff anymore. But, for me, it was a real challenge. How can I sleep and recoup energy on the go, given that I'm doing this in 72 hours? And it worked. It paid off.
What were some of those things then? Because I'm thinking from my personal perspective, I will spend 1 to 2 nights in a hotel every week when I'm traveling with work, going to different meetings. My sleep's okay because I try and do some certain things for my environment, but I'm going to be very interested in terms of what it is that you would advocate.
Yeah, so, when I'm staying in a hotel, I have my little bag of goodies next to me, which has got my sleep, the smells that I like. And I like lavender oil, essential oil. I love eucalyptus oil. So growing up in an Indian family, my mother would slather us with Vicks whenever we were sick, and she always used a lot of it, and things like Tiger Balm and stuff. So I've grown up associating the smell of eucalyptus with my sleep environment. So my bedroom permanently smells of a combination of lavender and eucalyptus. So I take my oils with me. I treat my hotel room like my home. So if I'm going to work, I keep my work clothes on. I work in a particular area of the room. Then I get out of the work clothes. I might go to the gym. I investigate, is there a gym? Is there a swimming pool? How can I exercise? How can I move? Do I take a yoga mat with me if I'm driving there? What am I going to eat when I get there? What time will I eat? What will I watch on television? When will I switch the TV off? Given that I'm away from home, I'll be feeling vulnerable. I might want to fall asleep with the TV on, which I would never normally do. I'd never normally lie in bed and watch TV in my own home. I don't have a TV in my bedroom, but I'm aware of all these things, and I try and recreate the same habits and boundaries in my own home. I even take a book that's easy to read, probably very, dumbed down, the sort of thing I don't want my clients to see me reading. I might even take a photo of my daughter with me. I might even take something woo, like a crystal or something like that with me. The things I'd have on my bedside table. I sleep on the same side of the bed. I look at where for the signs of light coming into the bedroom. I block out any visual displays of the time.
Yes, so I want to ask you in more detail about that in a second, but the core theme that's screaming out at me here is standardizing your environment as much as possible to what you have in your own home.
Totally.
Equally, hopefully everyone listening is aware that they should be doing these things in their own space, for starters, in terms of cool, dark, safe, secure, nice smelling, in a good environment. But when you are on the move, trying to replicate those is absolutely vital. And the time element phrase there interests me as well, Nerina. So not being able to see the time, is that another stressor that can ruin our sleep?
Yes, it is. I mean, and this is one of the biggest myths that I dispel for people around it's, we need to know what time it is when we wake up. Now, if you're a martini sleeper, have at it. Look at the time. Some people have these clocks that project the time onto the ceiling. Good luck to you, because they'll look at the time, they'll calculate instantly how many hours, and they'll go back to sleep for that amount of time. Your sensitive sleeper will be awake for that amount of time, worrying, catastrophizing, and they're normally perfectionistic overthinkers who do grind their teeth at night, probably go to bed wearing a mouth guard. They are absolutely the antithesis, or the sort of person who needs to check the time. Colin, can I just tell you one other thing that's amazing when you're traveling in hotels that you need to do?
Yeah, please do.
That I do. I always either phone ahead or get my PA to check, is there a fan in the bedroom? Other people's noises. I hate air conditioning in the room. It makes the room very dry or always too cold. So I phone, and I always have a fan in my own bedroom. Grew up in the tropics. The sound of the fan, it's white noise, puts me to sleep. They'll often say, no, we don't have a fan, we have air conditioning. I go, no, don't want air conditioning, I want a fan. And I'll give you amazing reviews if you make sure there's a fan in the bedroom for me. So a fan can really stop external noises intruding as well.
That's very interesting, because I found air cons very, very loud, no matter how premium a hotel you're staying in. And I find I'm very dry in the morning, and I never have as good a sleep. So that's interesting. The fan does what in effect is a similar job in terms of function, in terms of keeping the room cool, but radically different outcome in terms of the noise output, but also the kind of, I don't want to say safety, but maybe I do mean safety, the safety feel of it as well.
It does. It does. And what it doesn't do is it doesn't dehydrate the room like air conditioning does. Because when we're dehydrated, that stops. So your hydration levels can really impact on your ability to sleep.
Yeah. When it comes to like waking during the night there, we've spoken there about checking the time. I'm a big advocate of sleeping with your phone either outside your bedroom or well out of range of your bed so you can't check it or look at it. Obviously that light is going to cause you disturbances, but also it's another source of checking the time and starting to work out, oh, it's 4 a.m. I've got 2.5 hours till my alarm. Will I get a good sleep? Will I not? Will I go back into a full sleep cycle and all that kind of stuff that can go inside your head, particularly if you're somebody that's kind of gone down the sleep rabbit hole and trying to optimize it. What are some of the reasons that we wake during the night? Is it always natural? Is it okay? Or are there things that we should be doing to stop ourselves waking as much?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time, again, dispelling this myth around we shouldn't wake up during the night. So every human being will go through several mini awakenings during the night. Again, for us, hunter-gatherer survival. We can go through as many as 10 to 15 a night. A pregnant woman in the final trimester of pregnancy, that can double. So we wake up, check the cave is safe, and go back to sleep. We don't come into full consciousness, or at least we shouldn't. And it's when we get into clock watching and checking the time that we do come into full consciousness, then find it more difficult to climb back down. So it's totally normal to wake up during the night. What isn't normal is to stay awake and worry about it. Really common to wake between 2 and 4 in the morning. And it's a time when we can go into very vulnerable space. We can feel really alone. We can feel like all the worries, things that don't normally bother us too much during the day, are more likely to worry us between 2 and 4 in the morning. So again, that's why it's important when you wake up, don't check the time. If you have to go to the bathroom, and if you're in a hotel room, make sure you've rehearsed going to the toilet in the dark, so you don't end up doing something in the cupboard or something in the wardrobe. And, don't check the time, come back to bed. And I teach people how to fall asleep again. Once they've worked with me, they've had one session and we've gone through my famous non-negotiables, we then work a bit deeper and work on how to fall asleep if you wake up during the night.
Yeah, before we go towards the non-negotiables, which I was so excited to talk to you about, when we're waking and we need the bathroom, is that something that always has to be the case? Because you've spoken there about dehydration, and I've got a bit of an unusual preference. I typically do get up and go for a pee during the night, disclaimer.
Most of us do. I do too.
But there are periods where I don't, and it's when I've managed to cut my water intake off about 7:30, and I stop drinking before bed, and I don't dehydrate myself. I'm still really well hydrated. As somebody that trains a lot, I drink 4 or 5 liters of water a day, but I start to cut it off as a bit of a kind of a measure to try and make sure that I'm not kind of bursting for the bathroom at 3-4 a.m. Is that correct, or should I still be keeping my hydration up all the way to board?
I think you want to listen to your body and listen to whether that's working for you, and look at your training the next day. And, did you stop the hydration too early, and has this affected the quality? I know when I was doing a lot of sport, I used to run marathons and did a lot of triathlon and that sort of thing. When I was doing that, certainly my hydration was really important. And for me, the payoff was, do I not want to get up during the night, or do I want to feel really hydrated and on it the next day? I would prefer to feel on it. So, that's the thing, is don't worry about getting up to go to the loo. Just go to the loo. And in fact, that can be a really useful way of stopping a worry cycle in a really bizarre way. It's a tool in itself. So if you're lying in bed and you're worrying about something and you just cannot get out of the monkey brain, get up and go to the loo. Flush the loo, whatever you're worrying about. Imagine you're flushing it down the loo. You haven't put the lights on and stuff, and you almost restart your sleep so you don't continue in that cycle of rumination and worry.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's a great hack. I think that's brilliant. And all these little things that can trigger in our heads, like that kind of metaphorical flushing away of the problems, we're returning to bed and we're in a headspace where we've left our problems behind and we're able to go back restfully.
Yeah.
But I think that's very, very interesting. I wonder if people do tend to struggle going back to sleep after the bathroom, or whether it's more to do with the fact that they go back and they're still worrying. I suspect, like you say, it's probably to do with the worries are still with them rather than the fact that they've disturbed.
Well, yeah, there's worries, there's what could be going on in their physiology, if they've drunk alcohol, if they're not eating properly, if they're not properly hydrated, if their caffeine intake is high. All of that's going to impact on their ability to return to sleep again, or if they haven't moved enough during the day. And of course, if they then look at their phone and you've got the blue light there, that's going to stop the melatonin production as well. When you wake up during the night, you've already used up some of your sleep drive, during the course of the day. We're not sleeping. So hopefully, or if you have a little nap, that's okay as well. We can talk about naps because they're good. But throughout the day, we build up a sleep drive. And when you go to bed, your sleep drive is at its highest. But if you wake during the night, your sleep drive will have dropped somewhat. So it's going to be a little harder for you to make that ascent again, or descent rather, So it's sleeping well. It's a holistic toolkit. It's looking at everything, not just the condition of your bedroom and your sleep routines. It's everything you're doing from the minute you wake up is preparing you. Every choice is preparing you for how you're going to sleep at night.
Yeah, brilliant. Where do things like sleepwalking or sleep talking come from? I know they're fairly rare, but I guess a lot of people listening to this will at some point experience that. I know that I've slept talk or slept shouted before actually in my past.
It's actually amazingly common, especially these days where we are doing too much. We're on the go. The nervous system is carrying these days so much overexcitation. And so some of that, what you're referring to, by the way, they belong to a category of sleep disorders called the parasomnias, where you have sleepwalking, sleep talking, nightmares, night terrors, restless legs, teeth grinding, bruxism. So they all fall into that category of parasomnias. And so if your nervous system is overstimulated and you're on your phone a lot and you're abusing the caffeine and you're carrying a lot of stress and you're not building enough recovery and rest into your waking hours, the nervous system is going to act out at night. Then if you overlay on that or underlay, trauma, I used to sleepwalk a lot as a child and even into my 20s and 30s. It was when I worked on the trauma and did a lot of healing myself that, I very rarely, I never sleepwalk or sleep talk. I never cry out in my sleep anymore, So we need to, again, look at it holistically, go deeper if you have to into what you're carrying in your psyche, but also look at your day-to-day. Might not be sinister. It might be the fact that you're just not eating, drinking, moving, living life in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think that's very, very helpful because it's separated into two camps where one might need a lot more deep work through therapy, healing, and then the other is actually just how you're living your life. So I know there tends to be a correlation when I shout during the night is when I've got a lot of stress on at work, because I'm typically, and I wake up and I pretty much can sometimes remember, it doesn't always happen, I can remember that I was maybe shouting about a meeting or a delivery or a phone call, and that's where it's come from. It's not come from some deep-seated childhood event, or at least not to my memory. That's not something I can obviously rule out, but that's very, very interesting that there's those two camps there. There's that deep trauma, and then there's that more lifestyle-based thing that we can address more readily if we think about the boxes we need to tick within the day.
Yeah, I call it big T and little t, big trauma, little trauma, and but the little traumas, and in this last year during the pandemic, people have had all sorts of strange things going on with their sleep. And I think I was most interviewed by the media last year for stuff on dreams, people having weird dreams. People were dreaming a lot, and they were dreaming about, hidden caves and hidden attics and hidden rooms, hidden dens in their houses. And, so I did quite a few interviews on that, even on the BBC News, I think, and ITV. Why are we dreaming so much? And why are we dreaming about all these hidden areas in our homes? So that was fascinating to talk about that. So stress can sit in our psyche, and it can bubble up in our sleep.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What was one of the factors driving that kind of dream then, where we're dreaming about a kind of hidden or secret area? Is there some sort of
I mean, well, my hypothesis certainly is that many of us we were locked in. we were isolated. We were having to spend more time on our own. Yeah, sure, we all jumped on Zoom at the beginning and got excited about it, but that died out pretty quickly. And we were basically, a lot of people were dealing with isolation and loneliness. It was a lonely time for a lot of people. So we were having to be with our thoughts, with our psyche. There was less distraction than normal. So many of us were doing more work on ourselves. Well, I always do a lot of work on myself, but many people were having to go within and do more work and at discovering aspects. So many people said, I've changed up my friendships, my relationships have changed. I'm just doing things in a different way. My priorities are different. And this is as a result of going in, discovering these previously hidden aspects of our psyche in those dreams and these little dens and things. And then going, do you know what? I don't want to do life like that anymore. I need to change things.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I think the pandemic forced us to look inwards, and some people then had to deal with things that they'd disregarded or blocked out for many, many years. I'll take the pin out of the non-negotiables piece now, because I really want to hear what those 5 are, Nerina.
Yeah. So the 5 non-negotiables are, let me just set it up first of all. So if anyone is suffering the main sleep problems, difficulty getting to sleep, difficulty staying asleep, or sleeping, but no matter how much sleep you're getting, you just want to get more, you don't feel restored, rejuvenated, any of those big sleep problems, you want to apply my 5 non-negotiables for at least 10, 14 days. Then you will start to notice a difference to your, first of all, your energy levels. Then you'll start to notice the difference to your sleep. Where did they come from? Well, decades ago, I was working in a particularly well-known investment bank in the city and in Canary Wharf. I'm not going to say any more than that. Group of traders. In those days, back in the day, I was saying yes to most pieces of work of that type. And I know, so working with about 50 marauding traders at the end of the day, they gave me half an hour, tell them everything you know about sleep. They're not sleeping well. They were drinking, they were on the booze, and they were just horrible. And there's me, I'm 5'1", I'm 50 kilos, I'm small. And there was me trying to shout, trying to gain, some kind of credibility and might get my audience. And in the end, I was so pissed off. And I said, you know what, guys, I'm going to say what I need to say. And then I'm going to get the hell out of here, and I'm going to get paid really well to do this piece of work. I don't really care whether you listen or not, but I'm going to say this. And these are 5 things that you want to do if you want to sleep well, and then non-negotiable. And that's where the 5 non-negotiables were born. And that's in that flash of insight, I realized that I was saying 5 things to people over and over again. So here they are. Number 1, suffering any sleep problems, exhaustion, chronic fatigue, burnout, anything like that, eat breakfast within 30 to 45 minutes of rising, of getting out of bed. 30 to 45 minutes, include a source of protein. So it might be that you have a small breakfast. It might be as small as 8 almonds and 2 dates. And then an hour later or an hour and a half later, you have a bigger, more substantial breakfast. You have 2 breakfasts. But eat, don't intermittent fast if you're suffering any sleep problems, or if you're menopausal, or if you're suffering from PMT or mental health problems. Stabilize your blood sugar levels first thing in the morning by eating breakfast. Number 2, don't use caffeine as a substitute for food. So if, like me, you love your cup of tea, I'm snobbish about my tea and my tea cupboard is filled, but I don't have tea before I've eaten. So eat first, then have your cup of tea or coffee. Cut back on caffeine after 3 in the afternoon, no more than 2 cups of tea or coffee a day if you have any sleep problems. So don't abuse the caffeine. And a lot of people will wake up. If people aren't eating breakfast, they'll say, I hate eating breakfast. I feel sick if I eat breakfast. I need my cup of tea first. I eat breakfast, but I eat it 3 hours later. That's not breakfast. That's brunch. That's lunch, Number 3, hydrate. So you mentioned you've got an amazing hydration habit. That's great. You're doing a lot of exercise. Aim to drink between around 2 liters of water a day. Around 2 or 3. Ideally, particularly this time of the year. It's cold, it's dark, you've got central heating on, we're dehydrating. You need your hydration. I've got a litre bottle of water over there, which I keep an eye on. So number 3 is hydration. Number 4, get these devices. Oh, no, it's charging. Get your phone out of the bedroom. Cultivate a healthier relationship with technology. Have an electronic sundown about an hour before you get into bed. When you travel to that hotel, by the way, Colin, in my little sleep bag, I have a tiny little fold-up alarm clock, which I think I just got online, £7. and you have to press on it to get the digital display to see the time so it doesn't light up. But get your phone out of the bedroom. And people say, oh, but I have relatives. Well, get that landline. I've got one landline. That's for my mother who lives thousands of miles away. If she needs to call me, she can call me on that one, you know? So that's number 4. Cultivate a healthier relationship with technology. Get your phone out of the bedroom. Take more breaks from technology during the day, so you're de-exciting your nervous system throughout the day, so you get into bed at night and your nervous system isn't fried because you've been on your phone all day. Number 5, love this one. Get to bed earlier, 3 or 4 nights a week. That means be in bed around 9:30, between 9 and 10:30, 3 or 4 nights a week. Go to bed earlier. Now, years ago, when I started saying this, other sleep academics and experts were shouting me down, and they were saying, oh, where's the evidence for that? Because I'm not only trained in Western science, you know, I have a PhD in neuroscience, but I also have gone back into my lineage. I've studied a bit of Ayurveda. I've studied some traditional Chinese medicine, and these Eastern ancient sciences, they're really on the ball. And what they've been saying for thousands of years is that the sleep before midnight, as the light level drops, we get our most powerful healing phase of sleep. So last month, all of a sudden, media was getting excited because there was a research paper published that showed that sleep before midnight, going to bed earlier, is really important for reducing cardiac risk and dementia. I'm like, yawn? Yes, I've been saying this for decades. Okay, so those are my 5 non-negotiables.
I love all of them. And the 5th one has me laughing because when I was 15 playing district grade rugby, the coach that we had was this old kind of 65-year-old guy, and he would be saying to us that the game's on Saturday, boys. I want you all in your beds on the Friday night at 8, half 8, 9 o'clock, because the hours before midnight are worth double. And everyone laughed.
Yes.
But
yes.
It was he kind of said it was a bit of what we would call in Glasgow an old wife's tale, that the hours before midnight are worth double. But
it's true.
Swore by it. He swore by it. He said it was regenerative to sleep before.
Totally. And when I worked with Chelsea Football Club, you know, I worked with some of the footballers there, and I worked with athletes. Recently, we made a film with an NBA basketball player in America. And again, I was saying the same, you know, you want to have that competitive advantage. You need to start valuing that sleep before midnight and getting to bed early. And of course, a lot of people say, I can't do it. And that's, people have got into bad habits. They're on their phone, they're watching TV, they're multitasking, they're watching catch-up TV, plus they're shopping and they're dating and they're posting and they're looking at how popular they are. And all this stuff is happening at the same time. So they're constantly bombarding the brain with noise, and so it takes longer to wind down, you know.
Yeah, incredible points. And I think it also favors what our traditional circadian rhythm would be as well. So going to bed when it starts to get dark, waking up when it starts to get light. So 9:30, 10 p.m. in the UK during most of the year, that's when it's starting to get dark. You go into bed and then waking at 6, 7 in the morning after 8 to 9 to 10 hours in sleep. You're kind of ticking those boxes, and you've had that regenerative sleep pre-midnight, and you're waking earlier and feeling more refreshed because you've kind of adhered to that pattern.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm not over the top about measuring your sleep, although I have all sorts of devices that can measure, because I get gifted lots of things in my job. I love it. I get so much merch. It's great. But you know, but I'm loving that, you know, because a couple of years ago I did a piece of work with a company who were using proper medical technology to measure your sleep, and they showed that my sleep was optimal even during a really stressful time. You know, I had my mother with illness, my teenager was basically being a teenager, all sorts of things going on, you know, but yet my sleep was optimal. And now I've got this other thing that's showing me my sleep is optimal. And you know, if you're going to measure your sleep, make sure that you understand the data, and make sure you don't get obsessed with it as well, you know, because there's a new form of insomnia, by the way, called orthosomnia, ORTH, you know, which is the poor sleep which is created as a result of the over measurement of sleep, causing perfectionistic overthinkers such as myself to start becoming obsessed with their sleep and worrying about the data. So when your device tells you woke up 7 to 9 times last night, does it also say, well done, you're normal? It probably doesn't, you know? So you've got to understand it and not get too obsessed and not measure all the time. Listen to the body.
I love data. but I know that I have some orthorexic tendencies. So my Fitness Pal, for example, for tracking nutrition, there was
Yes.
periods where I went far too tight on that. Now, of course,
Yeah.
it meant I built a very good physique, but there was elements of it that I lost elements of freedom and I lost flexibility, which ultimately things like that should create. But sleep trackers, I think, friend for many people, but can be a foe for others. And the others are the
Yeah.
people you've called out there who would
Yeah.
worry that, oh, I woke 8 more times last night and
Mm.
I was
Mm.
1 hour less and my percentage of readiness for the day is lower, and all these things can start to psych you out. And I definitely believe in self-fulfilling prophecies. If you, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
worry that, oh, I'm not quite as ready for sleep tonight, I'm not as well rested this morning, or whatever it is, it actually tends to
Mm.
become true, and it becomes a cycle that you end up in.
Absolutely. Completely. And so much of our sleep can be disrupted by unhelpful beliefs. Thinking we shouldn't wake up during the night, thinking, oh, it's Sunday night, I've got a big week ahead of me, or I've got a big game the next day, I'm playing for England, I really need to get good sleep. And so many of us have had this thing where the night before a particularly important event, we don't sleep particularly well, but we pull it out of the bag, the night before an exam or that driving test or a presentation, and we pull it out of the bag, because as human beings, we're remarkably resilient, and we've got to trust that resilience. And if nature had designed us that one night, a bad night's sleep was going to send us over the edge, again, we would probably be extinct. So a lot of what I do is help people to trust in their resilience, to trust that while sleep is incredibly important, and there's a reason why nature's designed us to spend a third of our lives sleeping, we also rely on so many other things for our energy. It's not just about your sleep. It's about how you eat, how you move, how you breathe, the quality of your relationships, whether you feel spiritually in an alignment with your life and your values, are living a value-driven life, whether you're in toxic relationships, whether you've got enough support in your life. If you're in toxic relationships, no amount of sleep and sleep tracking is going to make you feel great.
Yes,
It just isn't.
that's a band-aid or a plaster for a gaping wound there, rather than
Yeah,
a solution
absolutely.
for it. With your work with the NBA athletes and the footballers at Chelsea, what were some of the themes that came through with athletes that you maybe needed to improve on?
Yeah, well, the wind down routines in the evening, and how they were preparing to sleep when they're coming off a big game, coming back to a hotel room away from home, away from loved ones, how overtraining can impact on the nervous system, and also reassuring them about this thing of, yeah, you haven't slept particularly well. Sorry, I'm just going to get my water as well. You haven't slept particularly well, and maybe your readiness score is in your toenails, but look, you are enmissioned. Look how well you played, because again, it wasn't just about your sleep, it was about your spiritual alignment with what you're doing and how passionate you were about your game. So a lot of it is reassurance as well.
Yeah, and particularly when it's one of those one-off sleeps as well, because I think that's one of the things you're calling out there, that if there
Yeah,
was a compounding effect of sleep
yeah,
deprivation over a period,
yeah,
performance will
yeah.
dip. Previous sleep guest that I spoke to, Dr. Nora Simpson, was talking about the percentage drop off in endurance and strength after a period. But it's not
Yes.
about one night. One night you can kind of get away with, 2 nights you can get away
Yeah,
with. But when you
yeah,
become
yeah.
a habitual bad sleeper and the data starts to show that regularly, then of course you end up in a
Mhm.
cycle of just being much below your performance level.
Absolutely. And I was also amazed working with professional athletes, and some of them are pretty young, and they've got some bad habits in the evenings. And so we had to kind of a little bit of a slapped wrist there and work on some of those habits, but also, help them to show them how to fall asleep again when they wake up during the night, because they would be on their phones and things like that. And they're a joy to work with because they're really in tune with their bodies. So you would say, no, okay, let's work on your breathing. I'm going to show you a breathing technique to help you sleep. And I say, just sit there and just breathe. Can you see what's going on with your breathing right now? Drop it into your belly a little bit, deepen it, slow it down, and they're there. So often, when I was working with a professional athlete, it was easier to work with them really quickly. Because they're highly motivated to get that sleep if they think it's going to give them a competitive advantage. But B, they're so in touch with their bodies, as opposed to someone who's been caned after 30 years of working in the city, and they're really overweight and they're just living on caffeine and alcohol and poor nutrition, and they're not exercising, so they're disconnected with their body. and it's harder then to switch that on. So they might need a few sessions, not just 20 minutes.
Yeah, of course. They're not as primed to make those
Mm.
changes. You called out breathing there, and I know that you've done a lot of work around the Wim Hof method. Can you tell us a little bit more about
Yeah.
that, please?
Yeah, so I'm obsessed with breathing. I worked in respiratory physiology years ago as an academic. When I went into health screening, we were looking at spirometry traces. And I remember one of the first things I said to my boss then was, Malcolm, why are people in the city breathing so strangely? They're all under breathing. And then he said, caffeine can put the breathing up into the chest, as can stress and adrenaline, sitting for long periods of time, not enough movement, slumping, looking at phones, compressing the diaphragm. So all of that, I got obsessed with patterns of breathing. And then I started, when I was an athlete myself, and I was doing a lot of training, I was playing around with my breathing. But it was actually after I stopped doing marathons and things like that I got more interested. I started doing things like yoga, and then of course cold water swimming. But I got into that because of stress, personal stress going on in my own life, and became very interested in Wim Hof, or Wim Hof, as he says, and his personal journey when his wife died, and he came back from the trauma of that, and started doing this breath work, and just really going on this journey with the breathing. So I started playing with it. I don't do so much Wim Hof breathing these days, but I do a lot of breath awareness. I start my mornings just noticing my breathing, and of course, when I get into the river, especially this time of the year, and I'm not one of the bobble hat swimmers. I'm a that sounds terribly arrogant, isn't it? No, I do put my head in. I'm
You're
a
the hardcore,
non-leader.
Nerina. Hardcore.
I am hardcore, and it really hurts, and I'm scared every time, and I dread it every time. That cold goes up the back of your neck into the back of your head and around. Oh God, it makes you feel, it's like ice cream brain, extreme, and it lasts a minute or so. But you really need to get your breathing right. And what I then notice is that the stress I had before I went to the river, I come back and it's not that the stress is gone, but I don't feel like that. I'm not carrying it in my body. I'm not triggered anymore. I'm in a much more resourceful place.
And that then carries over into you sleeping better at night?
Yeah, I know without a doubt that my sleep is amazing because of the combination of breathing, breath work, and cold therapy. And the cold therapy, you don't have to go into the Thames. I mean, a lot of people say to me, you must be mad. Mostly I get that every 4 or 5 times a week. Are you mad? Yeah. But you might just get into your shower, have your normal shower, and then at the end, just stand back from it, run it cold, and get in there for 10 seconds, build up to 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, and notice that you'll start to notice that if you calm down and just focus on exhaling, don't worry about the inhale too much. Don't go like that, because that will make the stress response worse. But if you just focus on your exhale, it resets your breathing from a stressful day in front of Zoom, so there's so much intelligence in the breath, so much.
Yeah, and I can picture it now, the people that breathe really heavy, sitting in front of their emails, a stressful email comes in, the sharp intake of breath, the stress response that kicks in. And of course, that then leads down the line to not dealing well with that at night. It's still ruminating in your brain. You've had these periods and spikes and troughs of stress and relaxation and dopamine spikes or whatever else from your devices as well throughout the day. So I find it very interesting that how you start your day or how you dictate your day through cold water and through breathing is something that it then adds up at the end of the day, and that links in with what you said, that it's everything you do throughout the day, not just the fact that maybe you have a very good bedtime routine, which of course is the entry point,
Everything.
but there's more to it.
Absolutely. All those choices, 1,440 minutes worth of choices that you're making during the day, landing in your nervous system, and going to impact. So, I go out on my dog walk, whether I choose to smile at other dog walkers, whether I choose to engage, or whether I'm on my phone constantly, whether I play with my dog, or I go off into the trails and notice that I'm in nature. And that's the other thing I'm noticing, and I'm talking about a lot and writing about it as well, actually, is that nature is such an amazing rebalancer from the effects of this pandemic and too much time in front of Zoom and technologies. Just get out into nature. I mean, of course, I've talked about the river, and that's one of the things I love about being in that water, because that's the thing, you get into cold water after about a minute of the cold, you start to experience the amazing effect of that cold immersion in this expanse of water. It works for me. It doesn't work for everyone. But just being out in nature, it's so good for your health, so good for your circadian rhythm and for your sleep.
Yeah, you've mentioned circadian rhythm there, and I spoke a little bit around it earlier where I was saying that going to bed when it's getting dark earlier in the evening and then getting up early in the morning can have a lot of benefits. Is it possible to oversleep? Because I know if I lie in on a weekend, which happens occasionally,
Yeah,
of course, that I actually
yeah.
feel more groggy than I'm waking up when I'm waking up at 6 or 6:30 on a weekday for work.
Absolutely. And hypersomnia, it's called. It's also a sleep problem, a sleep disorder. Is if we are, and this is the one that martini sleepers might find themselves doing. You know, they escape into sleep. So if your martini sleeper isn't necessarily just a good sleeper all the time, because they can sometimes abuse their sleep. So yeah, you've got to be careful. You've got to get your sleep timing. It's not just getting hours of sleep. It's what time you go to bed. It's what time you wake up. And I'm like you, if I oversleep in the morning, so I tend to sleep with I have blackout blinds, but I leave my curtains open slightly, and I like to see the light coming in, particularly this time of the year where it's getting light darker, you know. So I don't wake with an alarm. Most 99.9% of the time I don't use an alarm to wake me up, but I definitely like to wake up. And at the weekends people think, oh well, I'm just catching up. Well, you're better off getting up earlier, getting up at your normal time, or get up, read a book in bed for half an hour or something, enjoy that restful time in the morning, have a nap in the afternoon if you want to, but no later than 4 p.m. and no more than 20 minutes ideally, and then keep on the same schedule with your sleep, and you'll notice your energy levels are so much better.
That's very helpful. And I would certainly resonate from practical experience that lying longer on the weekend actually doesn't seem to recharge me at all. It actually makes
No.
me more sleepy and it kind of ruins my my rhythm. I would much rather get up and, like you say, if you catch a cat nap for a 20 minute or early afternoon,
Mm.
then it kind of sets you up to enjoy the rest of your day. So no, I really, really like that. One thing that I would feel would be remiss of me not asking you about is sleep supplements, because
Mm.
technology is increased in popularity, like your Oura rings and your sleep trackers and your Apple watches or whatever else is used. But so have supplements as a kind of what I would call a low-hanging fruit, really seductive option where people can pay a little bit of money and yeah, you'll sleep
Mm.
deeper, you'll wake less often. What's the
Mm.
efficacy of some of these? Are there any that stand out to you as particularly appealing?
Yeah, so I take magnesium supplements every night, and a good brand of magnesium supplement. Now, again, I get sent lots of merchandise. So in my cupboards, I have some amazing teas. I've got some CBD oil supplements, but I don't use them. I mean, I used my CBD sleep remedy the other night because I had a slight tummy bug, and I just really wanted to get that restful sleep. So I used it for one night, but most of the time, I don't use them because I'm using my holistic techniques. I'm using my 5 non-negotiables. I'm getting out into nature, I'm doing my cold immersions and getting enough activity, all that kind of stuff. So if you're needing to use something all the time, apart from the magnesium, because I do think that's it's really good for the nervous system. It's good generally for your health as well. But if you're having to use a sleep tea all the time, then you need to think about, well, what maybe it's just, if it's a chamomile tea, then, and it's not hugely strong, then that's probably fine, but some of the sleep teas can be pretty strong, and you even have a little bit, I'll have a bit of a hangover the next day if I have them. So if I want to be really sharp, I don't use them. When I do use them is when I'm doing long haul travel and I'm coming back on a night flight. Then I have my sleep teas with me just to optimize the quality of my sleep. If I'm traveling, like 8, 9, 10 hours or something like that. And it doesn't matter, I'm not getting to my destination expecting to go straight into a presentation or something like that. So that's when I'll use it. But, look at it, have a holistic toolkit is what I would say. And reach for natural remedies like aromatherapy oils, valerian herbs, passiflora, that sort of thing before you go for prescription sleeping tablets.
Yeah,
You
there's so
know,
much we can do before we have to reach for these things.
absolutely,
And you've named so many
absolutely.
different things with your 5 non-negotiables. Dealing with your day-to-day life as well would be a much better start than jumping straight towards, oh, this magic pill that's told me I'm going to sleep for 8 hours tonight if I take it, because then that becomes the comfort blanket which you can't shift away from, and you've still got all these other problems still bubbling away in the background, which will add up at some point as well.
Yeah, so I refer to that as the real work, capital R, capital W. And that sleep problems are, this is where our truth lands, isn't it? When we get into bed at night, the truth of how we're living, the truth of the choices we're making. And often sleep problems are masking the real work. So what I love about my work is I don't work with people again and again and again. Maximum number of sessions would be 3 sessions. And I do the 5 non-negotiables. In fact, the last 2 clients I've seen, they've not needed to see me after the first session. But what they have done, both of them, is they've gone away and they've done the real work. In the case of one of them, she's gone, yeah, I'm seeing a career consultant now because I really hate my job. I've realized and she's now realized that because she's got the resource. Now she's done the 5 non-negotiables, energy's better, sleep's better. She's got the energy to deal with the fact that she was deluding herself with the work she was doing. She hates it. So now she's got the energy to do that, or you've got the energy to address the fact that your relationship is in trouble. You need to sort it out or walk away from it, or you need to sit down and have those uncomfortable conversations with your partner or your teenager or whatever. So sometimes people hide behind the fatigue of insomnia, or they hide behind burnout. You know, I know people who are constantly saying, I'm always tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Okay, make some changes. Change your behaviors. Let's tidy up your energy. Let's clean up your energy. Then we're going to get to the real work. And this is what my next book is about, by the way, which is coming out next April. It's called Finding Inner Safety. So it's the first book. It's my 4th book. It's the first one that isn't primarily about sleep. All the others are about sleep. And this one, finally, the publisher wants a book that isn't about sleep, where we're talking about what lies at the hub of all of it, including sleep problems, is the way we're living our lives.
Yes, and we've certainly put forward a really strong, compelling case for living your life slightly differently to the modern traditional things that we've all fallen into, and I've absolutely loved hearing about it. If people want to continue the conversation with you, Dr. Nerina, where should they head towards?
Oh, well, of course, I have a website, www.drnerina, Nerina.com, and hopefully you'll have a link in your show notes or something like that. So that's the easiest place. Or just Google me. Just put Dr. Nerina Sleep in there. You can stalk away. There's loads there. There's loads on YouTube. There's loads of free resources as well. You don't have to necessarily buy books. There's meditations on Audible. There's all sorts of things. So there's hopefully a lot out there, because I'm passionate about not only helping people to sleep, but to live their lives in a more fulfilling and energized way.
And I think that's what your work is set out and it's looking to achieve as well. So the link to Nerina's website will be in the show notes below, and you can Google her, as I did for this show to do my research and understand what to ask about. It was all about diving into all the different YouTube videos and different interviews that you've done across the piece, and I've enjoyed lots and lots of them, and I've enjoyed this conversation too. If you as the listener have enjoyed this conversation as well, please take a screenshot, pop it on your Instagram story, tag me at call.cambro, and I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.